I've been begging for a raise for 3 years. My boss always said budget cut sorry. Then I found out they hired a new guy at 40% more than my salary. When I confronted him, he smirked. He's fresh talent, I said. Got it, and walked out. Next day he froze. When? He's fresh talent. Marcus leaned back in his chair when he said it. That little leather creak. The way his fingers laced together over his stomach like he was settling in to watch something amusing. The smirk wasn't even subtle. It lived right there at the corner of his mouth. Comfortable, rehearsed. I was standing in his office doorway holding a printout. The new guy's offer letter. Someone in HR had gotten sloppy with the shared drive permissions last week, and I'd stumbled onto the compensation folder while looking for onboarding templates. Funny how that works. Fresh talent, I repeated. Dylan brings a modern skill set. Different background. The market's competitive for people like him. People like him. You know what I mean, Janet? I did know what he meant. I'd known what Marcus meant for 3 years now. Every January, same conversation. Same concerned expression. Same hands spread flat on the desk like he was delivering bad news at a funeral. Budget's tight this year. Leadership's watching every dollar. You understand? I understood. I'd understood when I trained 4 new hires. Understood when I rebuilt the client database after the migration disaster. Understood when I covered Sandra's maternity leave for 5 months without a cent of additional pay because we were all supposed to be team players. 40% more than me, I said. That's what you're paying him. Marcus's expression flickered. Just a flash. He hadn't expected me to have the number. Compensation discussions are confidential for a reason. Apparently not confidential enough. I'm not going to get into the specifics of someone else's. I've been here 9 years. He started 3 weeks ago. Experience isn't the only factor. Marcus shifted forward, elbows on the desk now, slipping into his "let me explain how business works" posture. I'd seen it 100 times. Dylan has certifications. A master's degree. He worked at Morrison & Kemp before this. I have certifications. I paid for them myself because you denied my professional development requests twice. That's... Morrison & Kemp went bankrupt 2 years ago. That's why Dylan was available. The smirk wobbled. Not gone, but wounded. Janet, he said my name like a sigh. I don't know what you want me to do here. I don't set the pay bands. I don't control headcount budgets. I advocated for you when I could. When you could. Yes. When the circumstances allowed. The circumstances allowed for Dylan. That's different. How? It just is. There it was. 3 years of performance reviews, of exceeds expectations, of client thank you emails CC'd to leadership, of working weekends during the Pemberton account crisis, all of it reduced to "it just is." Not even the courtesy of a better lie. I looked at the printout in my hand. The ink was already smudging where my thumb pressed against Dylan's salary figure. All those zeros. Got it, I said. Marcus blinked. Got what? I understand now. Janet, let's not be dramatic about this. Sit down. We can talk about a path forward, look at next fiscal year. No need. I turned and walked back to my desk. They've been pulling this for a while. Not just Marcus, the whole company. Pendleton Industries ran on a simple principle: pay the minimum you can get away with, and if someone complains, give them just enough hope to stick around another year. I'd watched it happen to others. Rachel in accounting, who'd been promised a senior title for 2 years before they finally promoted Miguel over her. Miguel, who'd been there 18 months and happened to golf with someone on the board. Tom in logistics, who'd taken on 3 people's workloads during the layoffs and been rewarded with a gift card and a form letter. The trick was making people feel like they were almost there. Like the raise was coming, the promotion was around the corner, and if they just held on a little longer, stayed loyal, didn't make waves, it would all work out. I'd believed it. 3 years of believing it. The printout sat on my desk for 20 minutes while I answered emails and pretended everything was normal. Marcus didn't come out of his office. He probably assumed I was cooling down, that I'd come back tomorrow embarrassed about the confrontation and ready to be reasonable again. People like Marcus always assumed that. At 4:47, I opened my personal laptop and started a document. Not a resignation letter, that would come later, but an inventory. Every client relationship I'd built. Every process I'd created. Every piece of institutional knowledge that lived exclusively in my head because nobody had ever bothered to document it. The Pemberton account. The quarterly reporting system I designed when the old one crashed. The workaround for the CRM bug that IT had been promising to fix for 2 years. The contact information for every vendor we used, most of whom I'd personally cultivated because our procurement department couldn't negotiate their way out of a parking ticket. I saved the document to my personal cloud drive. Then I started making calls. Derek Chen picked up on the second ring. Janet. Been a while. 6 months. The Riverside Conference. Right, right. You told that story about the accounting audit, he laughed. Still tell that one at dinners. Derek ran the client services division at Harrington Partners. We'd crossed paths at industry events for years, grabbed coffee twice, exchanged LinkedIn messages maybe once a quarter. Professional acquaintances. The kind of relationship you maintain without really thinking about, just in case. I'm going to be direct with you, I said. Are you still having trouble with your regional accounts? Silence. Then, we've been struggling, yeah. Lost 2 people last year, why? I want to have breakfast tomorrow. Somewhere not near either office. Okay. There's a cafe on Morrison Street. The one with the green awning. I know it. 7:30? I'll be there. I hung up and made 2 more calls. Similar conversations. Similar tones. By the time I left the office at 6, I had 3 breakfast meetings scheduled for the next 3 days. Marcus was still in his office when I walked past. He didn't look up. The cafe on Morrison Street served terrible coffee but excellent privacy. Derek was already there when I arrived, tucked into a corner booth with his laptop open, pretending to work. You look like you haven't slept, he said as I sat down. I slept fine. I'm just done wasting time. Done wasting time with what? I told him. Not everything, not the printout, not the smirk, but enough. 9 years at Pendleton. 3 years of stagnant pay. A company that treated loyalty like a character flaw. Derek listened without interrupting. When I finished, he closed his laptop. What do you want, Janet? I want to know if you have a position that matches what I'm worth. Which is? I told him. The number landed in the space between us, solid and unapologetic. It was more than Dylan was making. It was what I should have been earning 2 years ago. Derek didn't flinch. We have a regional director role opening next quarter. Northeast Territory. It's been posted internally but we haven't found the right candidate. I know the Northeast market. I built Pendleton's client base there from scratch. I know you did. Why do you think I'm taking this meeting? We talked for another hour. Scope, expectations, travel requirements. By the time the cafe started filling with the mid-morning crowd, I had a verbal offer pending HR approval and a timeline. You'll need to give notice, Derek said. 2 weeks, standard. Can you start in 3? Yes. He extended his hand across the table. We'll have paperwork to you by end of week. I shook it. I'll be waiting. The second breakfast meeting was with Linda Torres, who ran procurement for a mid-sized competitor. The third was with Michael Vance, a former colleague who'd left Pendleton 2 years ago and landed at an industry consulting firm. Neither meeting was about jobs. They were about information. Linda wanted to know why Pendleton's vendor pricing had been so aggressive lately. I explained the relationship I'd built with 3 key suppliers, relationships that would evaporate the moment I left, because none of them had ever been properly transitioned to anyone else. Michael wanted to know if the rumors about Pendleton's Midwest expansion were true. I told him what I knew, which was considerable, because I'd been the one compiling the feasibility reports for the past 8 months. I didn't give away anything proprietary. No trade secrets, no confidential data. Just context. The kind of context that only comes from 9 years of being treated as essential but not valuable. By Thursday afternoon, I had a written offer from Harrington Partners, 3 professional references locked down, and a resignation letter saved on my desktop. I submitted it at 4:58 p.m. Marcus was in a meeting when the email hit his inbox. I watched through the glass wall of the conference room as he glanced at his phone, frowned, and excused himself. His office door was open when he read it. I could see his face from my desk. The way the color drained. The way his mouth opened slightly, like he was going to say something to no one. He looked up. Across the open floor plan, through the maze of cubicles, our eyes met. I held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then I went back to typing. He came to my desk 11 minutes later. I counted. Janet, can we talk? About what? About this. He held up his phone like I couldn't possibly know what he meant. You can't just, this is very sudden. Is it? We were just discussing your situation yesterday. We were. You told me Dylan was fresh talent. I didn't mean, he stopped, recalibrated. Look. I wasn't clear enough about our appreciation for your contributions. Let's go to my office and talk through what it would take to keep you. Marcus, yes? I don't want to be kept. The words landed like a door closing. He stood there, phone still raised, while I continued organizing my files. You're going to a competitor, he said finally, Harrington. Word travels fast. Derek Chen posted something on LinkedIn. Didn't take much to figure out. Didn't think it would. There are non-compete considerations. My contract doesn't have a non-compete. I checked 3 years ago when I asked for a raise the first time and you told me to be patient. His mouth did that thing again. The slight opening. The words that weren't there. You can't take clients with you. I wouldn't dream of it. I'm sure whoever replaces me will maintain those relationships beautifully. Whoever replaces, he stopped. The realization crossed his face like weather rolling in. The Pemberton account. You're the primary contact. I am. They specifically requested, they only work with you. They'll have to work with someone else. Janet. His voice had shifted. The management tone was gone. This was something rawer. What are you doing? I'm giving notice. 2 weeks, as per my contract. I'll document everything I can in that time, but honestly, Marcus, there's quite a lot that lives in my head. 9 years of institutional knowledge. Should have cross-trained someone years ago, but there was never budget for overlap staffing, you know how it is. He stared at me. Budget cuts, I said, sorry. Friday morning, I arrived to find Dylan standing at my desk. He was holding a coffee mug with the company logo on it, the kind they give to new hires in the welcome package, young, eager. The kind of well-meaning obliviousness that only comes from never having been burned yet. Hey, he said. I heard you're leaving? Word travels fast. I just wanted to say, I'm not sure what happened, but I hope it wasn't anything to do with me. I looked at him. 26, maybe 27. Fresh out of his master's program, recruited with promises and a salary that said you're special. He didn't set the pay rates. He didn't know what I made. He probably didn't even know why I was really leaving. It's not about you, Dylan. Relief flooded his face. Oh, good. Because I really respect what you've built here. The Pemberton account? That's legendary. Thanks. I was actually hoping, since you're still here for 2 weeks, maybe you could show me some of how you manage the client relationships? I'm supposed to be taking over some regional work and I don't really know the systems yet. I thought about it. 2 weeks of knowledge transfer. 2 weeks of making sure Dylan could handle what I'd spent 9 years building. 2 weeks of making myself dispensable when the whole point was that I wasn't. Talk to Marcus, I said. He can assign someone to train you. But you're the one who knows. Talk to Marcus. Dylan's face did something complicated. Not hurt, exactly. More like the first flicker of understanding that something was happening he didn't fully grasp. Okay, he said, sure. I'll talk to Marcus. He retreated to his desk. I watched him go, then turned back to my computer and the documentation I was very carefully not completing. Monday, Marcus called an emergency meeting. The entire department gathered in the large conference room, 12 people, not counting Marcus, who stood at the head of the table with his hands clasped in front of him like he was about to deliver a eulogy. As you've probably heard, Janet has decided to pursue opportunities elsewhere. No one looked surprised. Office gossip moved faster than official memos. We're going to need all hands on deck to ensure a smooth transition. I'll be redistributing her accounts and projects over the next 2 weeks. Sandra raised her hand. Which accounts? All of them. Janet handles the Northeast Regional Portfolio, the Pemberton relationship, vendor coordination for 3 of our main suppliers. He paused. Consulted his notes. The list went on. Along with the quarterly reporting system, client database maintenance, and overflow support for procurement. The room was silent. That's a lot, Sandra said finally. It's manageable. We'll divide it up. Among who? We're already at capacity. You said last quarter there wasn't budget for additional headcount. We'll find efficiencies. Janet was the efficiency. Marcus's jaw tightened. We'll adapt. Companies do this all the time. From the back of the room, Tom from logistics spoke up. The quarterly reports are due in 3 weeks. Janet's the only one who knows how to run that system. There's documentation. Is there? Everyone looked at me. I kept my face neutral. I've been creating handoff materials, I said carefully. But some of it is fairly complex. Might take longer than 2 weeks to fully transfer. How much longer? Marcus asked. Hard to say. The reporting system alone took me about 6 months to learn. But I'm sure someone can pick it up faster. The silence in the room had a texture to it now. Heavy and sharp-edged. Dylan, Marcus said. You have a strong technical background. You'll take point on the reporting system. Dylan, who had been trying to disappear into his chair, looked up with something like terror. Sorry, which reporting system? The quarterly analytics. Janet will walk you through it. I'll do my best, I said. In the time I have. Marcus stared at me. I stared back. The meeting ended without resolution. It was always going to. Tuesday, the Pemberton account called. Richard Pemberton himself. He never called. His assistant scheduled calls through my assistant, except I didn't have an assistant, and those calls happened once a quarter, maximum. Richard Pemberton calling directly meant something had gone very wrong or very right. In this case, it was wrong. Janet. His voice was clipped. Midwestern flat. I just got a call from some kid named Dylan. He says he's going to be my new account manager. That's correct. Since when? Since I gave my notice. Last Thursday. Silence. Then, you're leaving Pendleton. I am. May I ask why? I could have given him the corporate answer. New opportunities. Time for a change. Excited about the next chapter. Richard Pemberton had been in business for 40 years. He would have seen through it immediately. I asked for a raise 3 years in a row, I said. They hired someone new at 40% more than my salary. When I asked about it, my manager told me the new guy was fresh talent. Richard was quiet for a moment. I see. I'm sorry for the disruption. Dylan is capable. He'll get up to speed. Dylan can barely remember my name. He called me Mr. Pemberton 3 times even after I corrected him. He's young. He'll learn. Janet. Richard's tone shifted. Less clipped, more direct. Where are you going? Harrington Partners. I start in 3 weeks. Harrington handles regional accounts. They do. We're a regional account. The implication hung there. I hadn't planned this conversation. Hadn't even thought about it. Non-solicitation clauses, professional ethics, the messiness of poaching clients, all of it swirled in the space between his words and mine. I couldn't ask you to move your business, I said. That wouldn't be appropriate. You couldn't ask. No. What if I decided on my own? What if I decided that the person managing our relationship matters more than the company name on the letterhead? That would be your decision. Yes. It would. He hung up without saying goodbye. Richard Pemberton was like that. 20 minutes later, my personal email pinged with a message from his assistant. Mr. Pemberton would like to discuss future service arrangements. Please advise on your availability after your transition. I didn't respond immediately. But I saved the email. Wednesday, the vendor calls started. Maria Chen from Midwest Supply, who I'd worked with for 7 years. Frank DeLuca from Continental Logistics, who I pulled out of a contract dispute that could have cost him his company. Susan Oates from Regional Materials, who sent me a Christmas card every year addressed to the only person at Pendleton who returns my calls. They all had the same question. Was I really leaving, and if so, what happened to their accounts? Someone will be in touch, I told each of them. Pendleton is handling the transition. But you won't be there. I won't be there. Janet. You know how these things go. New person comes in, doesn't know the history, tries to renegotiate terms. We don't have time for that. We don't have margin for that. I understand. Do you? Because I've got contracts coming up. If Pendleton's going to try to squeeze me on pricing with some new face who doesn't know the relationship we've built. That's between you and Pendleton. No. It's between me and whoever I choose to do business with. I heard this, variations of it, 3 times in 2 days. I didn't encourage anything. Didn't suggest anything. Just listened and acknowledged and let the conversations end naturally. By Thursday, Maria Chen had requested a contract review meeting with Pendleton's procurement department. She cited concerns about continuity of service. She CC'd me on the email. I forwarded it to Marcus without comment. Thursday afternoon, HR called me into a meeting. Patricia Sawyer, Director of Human Resources, was waiting in the small conference room on the 3rd floor. The one they used for terminations and sensitive conversations. The chairs were deliberately uncomfortable. Janet. Thanks for coming up. Of course. I wanted to discuss your transition timeline. She had a folder in front of her. My personnel file probably. 9 years of reviews and records. 2 weeks is standard notice, but given the scope of your responsibilities, leadership has asked whether you'd consider extending to 4 weeks. With additional compensation, of course. How much additional? We could offer a retention bonus. 10,000. I did the math in my head. 10,000 to stay 2 extra weeks. To train Dylan on the reporting system. To smooth over the vendor relationships. To make sure the Pemberton account didn't walk. No thank you. Patricia's expression didn't change. Can I ask why? I have a start date with my new employer. I'm not interested in delaying it. We could potentially increase the bonus. Patricia. I asked for a raise every year for 3 years. The total amount I requested was less than what you're offering me now for 2 weeks of work. She didn't have a response to that. The folder sat between us, full of documentation of all the times I'd been told no. My last day is next Friday, I said. That's not changing. Friday morning, Marcus called me into his office. Not for a meeting. Not for a conversation. He just stood in his doorway and gestured, like summoning a misbehaving pet. I went. Because I still had a week left, and because I wanted to see what this was about. His office looked different than it had the week before. More papers on the desk. More coffee cups. The signs of someone working harder than they were used to. Close the door. I closed it. Sit. I'll stand. He looked at me for a long moment. The smirk was gone. Had been gone since Thursday of last week. In its place was something tired and frustrated and, underneath that, something that might have been fear. The Pemberton account put us on notice, he said. I heard. They're going to RFP in 60 days. They've invited Harrington Partners to bid. That's their right. You know what's going to happen. I know what might happen. Different things. Janet. He leaned forward. Hands flat on the desk, but not in the funeral director pose anymore. This was bracing. Holding on. I'm asking you. Person to person. Not as your manager. What is it going to take? Take for what? To make this right. To keep you. To fix this. I thought about it. 3 years of asking. 3 years of budget cuts and be patient and next fiscal year. 3 years of watching people like Dylan walk in with offers I'd never been extended. You know what it would have taken? I said. Last week. Before the offer letter, before the smirk, before fresh talent. It would have taken a conversation. A real one. You could have said, Janet, I can't get you what you're worth right now, but here's a plan, here's a timeline, here's what we're going to do. You could have treated me like someone whose loyalty mattered. I can do that now. I can. No. You can't. Because now I know what you actually think. Now I know that budget cuts was never the issue. The budget was there. It just wasn't there for me. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I advocated for you. Did you? Or did you advocate for keeping me quiet long enough to stop being your problem? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. My last day is Friday, I said. I'll document what I can. But I'd suggest starting a search for my replacement now. It's going to take a while to fill this role, and the market's competitive for people with my skill set. I turned and walked out. My last week was an exercise in controlled chaos. Dylan followed me around like a lost puppy, notebook in hand, trying to absorb 9 years of knowledge in 5 days. I gave him what I could. The basics of the reporting system. The names and numbers for our key vendor contacts. The broad strokes of client management. I didn't give him everything. Some things couldn't be taught in a week. Some things I'd learned through years of trial and error, relationship building, late nights and early mornings. Those things would walk out the door with me. Sandra took me to lunch on Wednesday. She'd been at Pendleton almost as long as I had, and she had the same tired look in her eyes that I used to see in the mirror. You're doing the right thing, she said. I know. I should have done it years ago. Why didn't you? She shrugged. Same reasons you didn't: hope, loyalty. The belief that it would get better. Does it get better? I think we both know the answer to that. We ate in silence for a while. 2 women who had given years to a company that measured their worth in what it could get away with not paying them. I'm going to start looking, Sandra said finally. Good. You have any contacts at Harrington? I pulled out a business card. Derek Chen's. I'd been carrying it since our breakfast meeting. Tell him I sent you. She took the card like it was something precious. Maybe it was. Friday came fast. I packed my desk into a single cardboard box. 9 years of work and it fit in one box. A few photos. A coffee mug. A plant that had somehow survived despite the fluorescent lighting. Personal things, nothing that belonged to the company. At 4 o'clock, someone ordered cake. The obligatory farewell gathering in the break room. People I'd worked with for years, standing around with paper plates, saying nice things they didn't entirely mean. Marcus gave a short speech. Janet has been a valuable member of our team. We wish her all the best in her future endeavors. The words were hollow. Everyone knew it. Nobody said anything. Dylan shook my hand and thanked me for everything. He looked terrified about Monday. Patricia from HR handed me my final paperwork. Severance information, benefits continuation, the exit survey that no one ever filled out honestly. At 4:47, the same time I'd started planning my exit almost 2 weeks earlier, I picked up my box and walked to the elevator. I didn't look back at Marcus's office. There was nothing there I needed to see. Monday morning, I started at Harrington Partners. The office was in a different part of the city. Newer building, better coffee, a desk with a window. Derek met me at reception and walked me through orientation personally. Richard Pemberton called this morning, he said as we settled into his office. He wants to discuss transition of services. Already? He's been waiting for you to start. Said he wouldn't talk to anyone else. I thought about Marcus, somewhere across the city, probably just now realizing that his biggest client was about to walk. The Pemberton account was worth almost 20% of his division's revenue. Losing it would mean questions, reviews, possibly layoffs, possibly his job. Set up the meeting, I said. I'll reach out to him this week. There's something else. Derek slid a folder across his desk. 3 of your former vendors have made inquiries. They want to know if we can match their existing service agreements. Which vendors? All of them. Maria Chen, Frank DeLuca, Susan Oates. People who had trusted me, worked with me, built relationships with me over years. People who had watched me walk out the door and decided to follow. I can't solicit them, I said, non-solicitation. You didn't. They called us, independently. All 3. I looked at the folder. At the names, the numbers, the potential new business sitting there like a gift I hadn't asked for but had somehow earned. This is going to cause problems for Pendleton. Yes. They're going to be angry. Probably. I should feel bad about that. Derek smiled. Just slightly. Do you? I thought about Marcus. The smirk. The fresh talent comment. 3 years of begging. All those Januaries, sitting in his office, being told that budget cuts made it impossible while people like Dylan walked in with 6-figure offers. No, I said. I don't feel bad at all. 2 weeks later, Richard Pemberton signed a 3-year service contract with Harrington Partners. The announcement went out industry-wide. Trade publications picked it up. Pemberton Industries changes agency partners after decade-long relationship. The next day, I got an email from Sandra. Just gave my notice. Using that business card. Thanks for everything. She wasn't the only one. Tom from logistics left a month later. Rachel from accounting followed in the spring. One by one, the people who had been holding Pendleton together, the ones who had been told to be patient, to wait, to trust, started walking out the door. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus got moved to a different division. A smaller one. Less responsibility, less visibility. The kind of lateral move that everyone knows is actually a demotion. Dylan, apparently, was doing fine. He'd gotten up to speed faster than anyone expected. Good for him. He was young enough to not know what the company really thought of loyalty. Maybe he'd figure it out in a few years. Maybe he'd be smarter than I was and leave before they had a chance to teach him. 6 months after I left Pendleton, I got a LinkedIn message from Marcus. Janet, I know we didn't part on the best terms, but I wanted to reach out. I've been doing some reflecting and I realize I could have handled things differently. If you ever have time for a coffee, I'd appreciate the chance to reconnect. I read it twice. The careful phrasing. The non-committal apology. The same man who had smirked at me, who had told me that a new hire was worth more than my 9 years of loyalty, now wanted to reconnect. I thought about responding. Thought about telling him exactly what I'd been thinking for 3 years. Thought about laying out all the ways he'd failed, not just me, but everyone who had trusted him to advocate for them. Instead, I archived the message and went back to work. Some bridges aren't worth maintaining. They're not even worth burning. You just walk away and let time do the rest. A year later, Harrington Partners promoted me to Senior Director. Northeast Region, 16 direct reports, a salary that would have made Marcus choke on his morning coffee. The day the promotion was announced, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single line in handwriting I didn't recognize. Fresh talent indeed. I never found out who sent it. Maybe Sandra. Maybe Tom. Maybe someone else from the old days, someone who had been paying attention. I pinned the card to my office wall, right next to the window. Some reminders are worth keeping.